I prayed that nothing would happen while I was away from the house for work. I wished that if something were to happen, I was going to be there to protect my girls, my family that show up, my friends that show up for help. Well, you know what they say, wish in one hand, shit in the other, see which gets filled first. You see, my job takes me away from my family for about 4 months at a time. That's how long it takes to get the new meat ready for the grinder. As one of the only few unaltered men with experience around, I was able to cut myself a pretty sweet deal. Around once a year, I put my hat back on and spend all my time getting the young men ready to protect this planet. Due to so many transformations, most of the population have found work in other areas. Even though there's plenty that have some sort of offensive powers and abilities, they usually get a deal with the state or the city to use their powers to, well, protect that section. This allows them a lot more freedom and it suits most of them just fine. Especially those that can heal and those that have other attributes like extreme cultivation, they've found all sorts of lucrative positions. With all this in the civilian sector, there is still a massive need for military, especially after the last time showed that even over in the middle of Europe, you're going to need somebody with pretty big guns to take over whatever in the hell's coming next. With so few of us, though, the money got a whole lot better as they needed a whole lot more boots on the ground. Yet one thing did remain the same. All the new meat needed to know their basics. I remember it was a bright and sunny day. I was sweating my frickin' balls off as we worked our way through the Buddy Team live fire range. Though a very long day no matter what, the trainees were actually doing everything by the numbers like I trained them. I mean, seriously, when you're up their ass for this long, they know they gotta do it right. All those long hours of drills on reloads, movements, reactions, different types of sprints, physical training, different studying we had to do, navigation, and so much more were coming into effect, and they were doing very well. So much so that I didn't have to give them any critiques. They just went through the range for certification. Right around 1500, but at least I guesstimate it was around that. That was where we were, I don't know, 60-70% complete with the entire platoon. Just as the trainee on my right got up to perform his 3 to 5 second rush, anyone still on their feet was suddenly no longer on their feet. And yes, that included myself. I didn't see the distortion coming this time, and it was a very strong one. It was very big. Not only did I feel disorientated, that was strong enough to put me on my knees, but the wave of force that came across was enough to actually push me over. I hadn't felt this since the first one. Many of the younger trainees lost their lunch as the distortion was very, very powerful, and they all screwed your inner ear. So much that I was seeing the world around me just move and distort. It was like looking at things underwater and above water at the same time as water splashed around. Yet you're still above water looking at the scenery. I was trying to yell, "Safety's on!" as much as I could, and I have to say it several times until I heard the telltale click of the safeties going back on. Eventually, getting on my feet after trying not to puke, pass out, and shit myself all at the same time, I got up and yelled, "Status!" The squad leaders got their status and stumbled over to tell me that everybody was dizzy as all hell, but unharmed, which was very, very good. I paused for a second, took a very, very big drink out of my canteen, and thanks to that, I was actually able to force the last of my gut from operating in reverse. Seriously, I do not need to puke out my nose in front of the trainees. That is, well, let's just say it's not professional. After putting everybody into a patrol base, those with ammo kept security while I checked in with the command. On my way over to check in with them, I sent the group message that I normally do. Suddenly it hit me. The girls. The girls are alone. With that realization, I scrolled through the contacts and sent a message to my neighborhood militia that I would be back as soon as I could, but if they had to, just make sure the girls were okay. But that wasn't enough for me. I scrolled and I sent another message. This one was to my blue-skinned French neighbor. I told her I was at work several states away. I just about begged her in that message to look in on the girls and protect them if she has to. And my nerves were getting tied up in knots when I didn't get an immediate response. When my phone buzzed at me, I suddenly felt my nerves relax for a second as I was suddenly focused on it. And normally, when I get an emoticon, I simply roll my eyes. I hate when people do that. But seeing that thumbs up from my French neighbor gave me the biggest fucking smile. Unfortunately, that is the only good news. After making a few calls, we realized that our civilian bus drivers had all taken off once they realized what had happened with the distortion, so that meant no transportation at all. We didn't have any extra food, so everyone is going to be running on empty pretty soon. And of course, there was ammo. Oh crap, the ammo. If distributed evenly across everybody, it only comes out to about 15 rounds apiece, and that includes me. What's worse is that many of the drill sergeants with families around wanted to head back to their families, were begging to be released. A couple even just simply took off. I can't really blame them, as they wanted to check out on their own. And nobody was going to hold that against them, at least not in this moment. But for the rest of us, we've got a job to do. I was not the first one to think of shuttling trainees back with our 1-ton truck and 15-passenger van. Since they're both hover now, it should be a whole lot faster. But I was the first one to get the company on their feet, armed, and moving towards the battalion area. Reason being, if we started heading back, the vehicles wouldn't have to travel as far, which meant they could get back quicker and get back for even more. And besides, I didn't want to be static when things started to go to shit. As we walked, we tried to keep the trainees' minds off the pain and exhaustion and hunger they were feeling, and of course the worry of what was going on, by letting them know as much as we could. Whenever a phone started chiming, we simply turned around, held it up, and we started to read off what we knew. Across the world, you would think that people would change like they did in the first distortion. But nope, not this time. Instead, creatures began to appear out from the strange haze that the distortion had left behind. I was too put back, I didn't even see it, didn't realize that the reason I couldn't really see straight is because that haze was there. It was altering our reality, and no wonder I couldn't tell which way was up, down, left, right, or center. We started getting reports of human and humanoid creatures seen hell-bent on hunting each other down. They would face each other and beat the living shit out of each other when they got close, but they would definitely take anybody out with them. Along the way, they would kill anyone they find. Regardless of species, these new arrivals would almost slaughter everybody without hesitation. And it was just insane. Video of some bald purple guy with a scroll on his back and holding a large book like it's his balls made everybody wonder what they were even looking at. Yet once we saw that this one pulled his magic out of said book, it made a lot more sense. Intermixed with all the human and humanoid, we had some sort of anthropomorphic animals, from an 8-foot-tall bipedal jackal that honestly looked like an armored Anubis, to some blue werewolf-looking thing, to even a 9-foot-tall Bengal tiger with some sort of strange glowing eye patch. None of this made sense. In this mix are angels, some with armor, some without, demons too, all of them throwing around magic. And as we looked at this, we all had the same thought. Great, it's another one of those distortions. Wonderful. Around the world, those that can fight back did for sure. Though the magic they used was tough, the insistence on so many to use melee weapons gives us the advantage, at least for a while until they get close. We all finally reached the battalion, and we were told to secure all personnel inside. From there, we could actually pull up some streams and see what the hell was going around the world while the command tried to figure out what our next play was. And when we pulled it up, it wasn't pretty. Some of these things seemed almost ethereal, like some sort of strange cryptid creatures. Although it does seem that physical weapons have some sort of effect, but it seems as though they might need some sort of specialized weapon. We saw somebody going with a bunch of pistols at some sort of energy firing out of them, even though there was no barrel, and those seemed to work. But it seems as though it took a lot of hits from any type of ballistic weapon to take these things down. Others were things like some fire-based demons. And we saw on a CCTV camera some little girl that actually was fire-based. But instead of actually being a demon, she turned her toys into a fire-based golem. And yet golems were everywhere. Stone, metal, didn't matter. They were all very dangerous as they were very difficult. They didn't feel pain. They didn't stop. They were like the fucking Terminator. It was horrifying. Yet they weren't invulnerable. Most of the humans that were there out of whatever ether, whatever quantum flux field or whatever the hell they came out of, used blades. They were decked out also in gaudy armor, too, for some strange reason. Some carried claymore-style swords or giant axes, yet usually that was the men. Females didn't really carry those, although some did carry swords. They weren't as gaudy, but it was odd. It was more, I don't know, diverse, you could say. For example, there was one redhead that we could see using two short swords and some sort of teleportation magic. Hell, there was even one kitsune in a red dress with her tits hanging out. All I could say is, why? And then I realized those nice jugs made you hesitate. And then the magic from her tails would make you very, very dead. Looking at these individuals running around, you could think that we could simply overrun them with numbers. At first, it looked that way. Then they began showing up with whole armies. We didn't even know this was a thing yet. From demon armies to barbarian armies to seemingly old-school samurai armies coming in by the thousands. Even medieval soldiers. It was crazy. There was even more than that. Each one being led by someone with some sort of insane abilities from what we could see. The videos were coming in, most of them rather short, and they were never locked in close because most were CCTV cameras or cell phone cameras. Even projectile-wielding strike teams seemed to show up. We could see them moving through shadowed areas. They couldn't hide from the night vision, even though they thought they did. What was being reported on, or at least what we were seeing, was only the very tip of what was coming. We couldn't see it all. There was just so much. It's no wonder with such a huge distortion, everything changed. And right now, we have much bigger issues outside this building. We can hear from the other side of the post shooting. A lot of shooting. Rushing downstairs with the other drill sergeants, I can see two winged humanoids flying somewhere in, out, and around the devil herself. As they do, minions break into buildings and kill everyone. We're on the other side of the valley, and there's a lot of foliage in between, so it's going to take a minute for them to get to us. So we have some time, just not a whole hell of a lot, as their minions seem only interested in breaking in and killing everyone. Doesn't matter if they get injured or killed, as long as they kill you. Oh, what the hell. I started screaming up the stairway, "Everyone downstairs! Grab your shit, get up, let's go!" And they started running down. All my men had been drilled and trained, and everybody else in my company. They immediately came down, and thank God, the truck came rolling in, and it dropped the back end, and sure enough, they'd come from the AHA, the ammo holding area, and they had everything we were going to want. Pallets of ammo and grenades, everything we were going to need. I wish we had some more grenade launchers, but, it is what it is. We got what we got. I told them immediately to load up every single magazine they got. They're going to need it. And all you could hear was the exercising of the thumb as more and more ammo was let in. A few of the trainees turned up. Drill Sergeant, aren't we going to go help them? We had to remind them, can't help them if we're fucking dead. Now load those magazines and hurry up. About halfway done, we saw one of these, what turned out to be angels, crashing down into the battalion area and seemingly sliding across until it ran into a berm. Then we looked up, and sure enough, another one came, smashed into our Charlie company, and fell down to the ground. All I could think of was, ouch. I didn't have time to worry about it, though. I immediately told the men to line up because I looked over, and sure as shit, there was Beelzebub, or whatever the hell you want to call her, looking right down in our direction. And what was at its feet? A whole bunch of trouble. The horde of minions was coming in, so I immediately told everybody, 2 ranks! 2 ranks! Line up right here! And we lined up just on the other side of the building. First rank, kneel! Second rank behind him. First rank fires, wait 1 second. Second rank fires, then wait 1 second, then first rank fires. Remember, we don't have a lot of ammo, so pick your target. 1 shot, 1 kill. Is that understood? Yes, Drill Sergeant, is all I heard from them. Thankfully, one of the other drill sergeants was on his game too. Fix bayonets! And immediately everybody pulled out the bayonets and snapped them on, checking to make sure they're good with a quick wiggle and pull, and then lined up getting a beat on them. As the commander finally came out of the office because he had his hands stuck on that hand mic and trying to figure out what the hell was going on, trying to get any type of reinforcements, he had come out just in time to see the hordes of demons arrive. The devil herself was being a little slow, I guess wanting to enjoy watching us get tore up. But then the shooting began. The NCOs had gone upstairs to the windows, broke them out, well, shot them out, and used them for elevation. From one side to the other, the hordes kept coming as the devil slowly got closer. One angel uses chains to bind it as the other one got ready to use some sort of hellfire sword. The devil squirms and fights as the battalion of men now, as every single company had now lined up shoulder to shoulder with mine, was now firing and dumping all the ammo not only into the horde, but into that winged bitch. The devil falls to her knees, screaming as the horde continues to advance. We turn the weapons down, all of us behind, screaming to aim at the horde coming towards us, and they're getting closer and closer. They fall just as well as any other man to a bullet, many of them not wearing any armor, thinking that they're just going to scare everybody into crapping their pants, and then hiding down, cowering in fear. But we don't fear. No soldier around the world hid in fear at that moment, even as the ammo was beginning to run out. And we started getting ready. Down the line, you could hear, "Bayonets, ready to charge!" And with that, the entire battalion ran down the hill towards the horde, bayonets first, driving them deep into the chest of the first and second line, many of the soldiers jumping up, driving over top of their brethren, and slamming the bayonets into the chest and face of those bastards right there. With that, it became a clash of steel. A clash of bone and blood as everyone fought tooth and nail for survival. The demons that came to us, the barbarians that were with them, it didn't matter. They're all gonna die at our hands because this is our world and we're not giving it up that easy. Overhead, those 2 angels continued to beat the hell down on top of the devil herself, beating her down onto her knees, and down on her knees, she's not so tall. Still tall to me, though. As we tore into each of them, I saw many of my men fall back, injured, and yet we still demanded, "Forward!" as we continued to bash into them, swinging wildly, grabbing a hold of them, ripping our arms around their neck, squeezing as tight as we can, and with a solid jerk sideways, hearing the telltale pop of the spine, then releasing as we went for another one, dodging all sorts of blades, bows, spears, and axes as we went, grabbing whatever melee weapons we could and driving them into the face of our enemy, and then driving right into the heart of their horde. Many of the demons, not realizing what was going on, started to panic, started to run, and the devil actually swatted them away with her tail. She did not want any to fight against her. She would not let any disgrace her, and would rather kill them than let them disgrace her being. Yet, as her attention was pushed away from the angels struck down right through her forehead, one through her forehead and the other straight through the chest. We knew this. One to the heart, one to the head, and she fell back and she was done. With this, the demons seemed to lose all their power and almost all their fight, but we did not. We had lost too much. We had been attacked, and we wanted blood. And we were going to get it if we had to rip it out of their throats or take it from their ass. And now we had two angels on our side, and the battle would end much, much quicker. After the conflict around the world, the results were, for lack of a better term, ghastly. The majority of the men around the world died protecting their homes, families, friends, or whatever. Even the armored soldiers around the world were barely able to stop the onslaught of all these creatures that came in just wanting destruction. Across the world, more of the new arrivals realized we are actually not their enemies and joined their ranks. Even with this, it did not come close to replacement. Even with all those that were now our allies, were nothing compared to the losses. All losses calculated, our population is now worldwide down to 2.1 billion. That's over a 50% loss from what we had before this distortion. My men suffered 34% total loss of personnel with a 100% casualty rate. Casualty just means that you've taken damage. Doesn't mean you're dead, but losses do. It would be a long time before we were able to sort this out, longer than I planned to be here. Thankfully, they're going to pay us extra because, well, hazardous duty pay and all that, but still, it's going to be an extra few weeks. After sending the fallen home, with full honors, by the way, the rest of the class was finally able to graduate. I had never felt prouder to walk with my trainees. Catch that. With my soldiers. Once they were sent to their duty stations the next day after graduation, I could finally pack up and go home. I'll tell you what, pulling in that raised ranch never looked so good to me. Pulling in, the girls saw me and rushed out to hold me. I didn't even barely get the door open before they were already reaching in. I know that they had made it through this distortion with some help, by the way. But being able to hold them was the greatest feeling, as I know they're alive. I feel their warmth. I feel their heartbeat. And right now, they're squeezing a little tight. Let's hope they don't squeeze out a fart. While I was busy dealing with the devil, the town had to deal with a very large group of, all I can say is steampunk cyborgs that were led by some really big cyborg, but it was a gun-wielding, four-legged freak. They sent me pictures of it, and I was like, holy shit, how'd you take it down? Well, it turned out they could only take it down as the town pulled together as these things went from different house to different house, just tearing things apart. And they were able to beat them with the help of our blue neighbor, that thankfully made it through as well. She was able to actually start picking off on that four-legged freak, knocking out his gun, then knocking out his legs, and then thankfully taking a few shots and knocking out the little bit of brains he had left. The only issue around town, well, I should say the only big issue, is that a lot of houses were destroyed, so a lot of people were starting to double up. Unfortunately, one of the houses destroyed belonged to Annalise, although I can't really pronounce her name right. She doesn't mind that I call her that. But when her house was actually destroyed, or I should say burned to the ground, the girls, well, Ruby and Hazel offered her one of our spare rooms. I didn't mind, since she had actually kept my girls safe, and I very much thanked her. holding her hand in almost like the sandwich wave that, and I just shook her hand, squeezed it as tight as I could. She looked at me sideways, thinking I had some sort of arterial motive, but, I mean, as hot as she looks, I got two girls that take care of me, so I'm good. Another surprise I was not ready for was when I realized that Dragon Mommy and her daughter actually came out of my house, too. Their house, as it turns out, had been damaged and was still being repaired, so the girls actually offered those two the spare room. Well, as long as it's temporary, I was fine with it. Besides, both of them hang out with my girls enough that they basically live here anyway, so why not? With all the things changing so much, it was actually getting difficult to keep track of everything that was going on. Right now, all I can say is it's good to be home, even if I'm a little outnumbered. I said that to the girls, and of course, they got a laugh as they realized that I'm the only guy in the house. I did have to stop and ask where Dragon Mommy's elf son was. Apparently, he got a job as a healer, so hey, why not? With that type of pay, at least he's not going to be looking at me for a relationship. He's going to have women throwing themselves at him. When I said that, his dragon mommy was not exactly happy about that, though his sister giggled along with all the rest of them. And with that bad joke breaking the ice finally, I headed inside. As soon as I walked through the door, I picked up my girls, gave them another hug, and said, "It's good to be home."